Hello and how's it going? My name is Travis Shelton and welcome to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, where I interview guests who want to help others investing in real estate. And today, what I wanted to do is bring together the best of. So the best of 2023, the best interviews, the best quotes, the best of everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to splice together just some really key points, some really great topics, some really great motivational quotes for you that we recorded in 2023. Really hope you enjoy. What's the motivational quote you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess like the one thing that comes to mind is anything is possible if you're willing to work for it. And that's a really nice quote from Rob Dyrdek. And kind of just goes back to how hard are you willing to work for something, like how bad do you want something. I think that if you're never going to quit, then success is inevitable. So that's a model I'd like to live by.
I love it. And it's always crazy to me because entrepreneurs will work so hard in life to not have to work a W-2 job or 40 hours a week. And it's funny because my background is healthcare, and people are working 60, 70 hours a week and they don't get overtime. They don't get anything. It's just kind of discretionary effort. Right. And yet, they're unwilling to work a little bit harder to be able to get the freedom. But yet these entrepreneurs like yourself, you'll work crazy hours so that you don't have to work 40 hours at another job. So I love the hard work mentality. And I think it's so evident in every entrepreneur I speak to.
There's a million good quotes out there, but one that I chose is do not fear failure, but rather fear not trying. And I think that hits me pretty hard in the sense that you're not going to get anywhere if you don't try. And so you really, really, really need to at least give it the good old-fashioned college try, right? I mean, if you have anything that you are inspired to do, obviously it's going to take proper planning and things of that sort, but that's a huge thing, is actually just pushing through and trying. I remember a lot of high level people that have pushed through, and they talk about these amazing valedictorians who were the 4.5 students, and they're just crazy smart, and they just never tried new things. They just flowed through the system and the generic way of, I'm going to get a degree and do this and do that. And then they're 40 years into their career, shoulda, woulda, coulda. And so I think trying is such a humongous thing, and knowing that you just need to do it. Because 20 years down the road, you're going to be kicking yourself if you didn't.
No, I love it. And it's funny, you mentioned those valedictorians. It's also they're not used to failing because they've always gotten A's, right? But we learn the most through failure. But our kind of education system doesn't really let people or want people to fail, right? You're always driven to get, straight A's like I was, right? So really interesting. And thanks for sharing that motivational quote. Love it. I think a lot of healthcare professionals, I always like to thank you for everything you do for patients. And, I know a lot of us worked really hard for degrees to be able to help other people. And it's one of my passions for helping people in the real estate investing, but I really do appreciate all the hard work you do for patients each and every day that you worked. And occupational therapists don't get all the love that they should, that's for sure, or the pay that they should, but I appreciate it.
That's also for sure. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I feel, that a lot of us are servants at heart. And I can see that in your meetup and a lot of the people that you've connected me with. There's just some really, really good souls out in the investing world. And yeah, I'm glad I met them.
Yeah, we start
My quote is a very unique quote. It is not only an inspirational quote, it is a Chinese curse. And the reason I love this quote is it reminds me of how unique and crazy of times that we live in. This is the most unique period of history ever. Our generations before us have never experienced the stuff that we're experiencing. And this not only brings massive opportunities, it also brings massive challenges. This quote reminds me, I always remember it, that with these opportunities and challenges, it requires us to be super adaptable, highly focused, and highly motivated to take advantage and to protect ourselves from the opportunities and the challenges that are ahead of us. So I love it.
I couldn't agree more. You know, it's funny. Like every time someone says, "Oh, these are challenging times," I'm like, "Well, sure they are because we've never experienced them, right?"
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Also, we're at this information age that we literally have so much information at just the tip of our fingers, and now with AI and just everything that's happening with that at such a rapid pace. I mean, the world changes every day. Yeah, it really is interesting times. I like that quote for sure.
So,
do you know why it's called why it's a curse?
Well, it's a curse because it's a double-edged sword, right? You know, some of the worst periods in history are also the most interesting times in history, right? So we're experiencing some very crazy challenges right now, and you know, interesting times are turbulent, good and bad times. So that's why it's a curse and a blessing. It's double-edged.
That's cool. I like that.
But if I can just add, I love your opening where we say we don't talk about tenants enough.
Yeah.
We are in the people business, right?
Sure.
We think we're property managers. We are people managers. The reality is if you have an empty unit, it's not paying you anything, right? I guess if you're a flipper and you buy it, it's empty and you flip it, that's great. But if you're long-term holding a property to get that appreciation over the years, you are in the people business. You know,
I've never heard it talked about like that, but you're dead on. I mean, Nell hit on the head. Like
your success and failure is through the people that you rent to. So it's time to say, hey, great brick and mortar, fantastic, I got a good deal. But if I'm really going to make this work, I have to be an expert at finding the right person. We call them the right business partner, because if you look at them as just a tenant, they're just a tenant. Yeah, there's someone lives there. But if you realize you need them to have success, they're your business partner. So you're going to treat them like a business partner. If they're successful, you're successful. If they fail, you fail.
Can you share the motivational quote that you brought for our audience?
Yeah, so I love this one. This is one that is actually came from one of my old mentors when his, he was going through some personal stuff. But the quote is, "What's hard to do now is easy to live with later." And it also reminds me of another quote that one of my door-to-door sales managers used to say is, "The work you put in today determines the zip code you live in 10 years from now." So what's hard to do now is easy to live with later. And for me, it's very simple. I spent a large part of my career kind of feeling like I was always on the wrong side of the coin. Like I would see people in the business have it easier, or maybe, when we'd be in a refinance boom and I'm doing all purchase transactions, being like, man, I wish I was over there because these guys are cleaning up and it's easy what they're doing compared to what I was doing. But I'll tell you that, you can always look back on hard times and the hard things that you go through and always appreciate it, because whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, like this makes sense why I went through this, because it prepared you for what you're trying to do in the future. So yeah, that's the quote.
Yeah, so during that, financial education and journey, Bigger Pockets was certainly one of the biggest influences. And on episode 276 of just the traditional Bigger Pockets podcast, they had Bryce Stewart. And he was kind of telling his story and kind of had a story similar to mine, where he reached financial independence by the age of 35. And one of the biggest things that he brought up was that you need to vacuum the truck. And at face value, that just seems like an obscure quote. But he really went into, at the time, they were in a situation where he had to get rid of this truck that he still owed the bank on, so it had a note. He didn't want to trade it in because then you lose a whole bunch of your equity on it. And he had never done that before. But he said, well, I don't know how to sell a truck with a note on it, but I know how to clean it up. So he vacuumed the truck. And then once it was all clean, he said, well, I don't know how to sell this truck with a note on it, but I know how to list it on Craigslist, and that doesn't even cost anything. So he took that next step, and the next step, and the next step. And within a month or two, got the vehicle sold. And looking back is like, I don't know why I was afraid of that. And I think that just applies a lot to real estate. It can seem very daunting. If you would have told me 2.5 years ago that I would own an apartment building, I would think that was insanity. But honestly, buying this last one, the 15-unit apartment building, was less scary than the first duplex. And so as you go, there's always people and tools available for that next step. And it's just taking the next one, and eventually it just happens. You just get there.
I absolutely love that. I'm a big believer in that. Get 1% better a day, or take one step forward every single day. And I think your story and that story that you shared is just that. You got to get started.
Yeah.
And so many of us, analysis paralysis, and you're sitting there running numbers or underwriting deals until you're blue in the face, but never making an offer, or never actually learning anything, or you're just staying on the sidelines. So I really love that. So can you share your motivational quote with our audience?
Yeah. So I'm not much of a quote person. I just, for me, they change so frequently for whatever season I'm in life. And recently, I would say in the last few months, I have this really wonderful counselor who just, he said, he was really talking a lot about integration and how that works in life. And for me, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, so a lot of my background and how I live life is in that fashion, just from scripture and faith. And so he said, he wastes nothing and he invests in everything, meaning God wastes nothing. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, all the victories, all the lows, none of that is wasted. It's invested in everything that you do. And when you're in a low place, that is very hard to digest, because, you're like, how is this going to get used? Because I don't feel great. And maybe a little bit of a selfish thought of like, I don't care if this is going to help somebody in the future right now because I'm hurting. But that has been a quote for me that has carried me through some tough seasons and then been really sweet in good seasons. So just knowing that every choice I make, every good and bad thing that happens, it is never wasted. It's always invested into my life.
I love that. I mean, there's something I have on my whiteboard that, it's just fear not, because, he's always with us. And, when we're going through those hard times, this too shall pass. And
yes.
Those sorts of things that, that he's still there. And, as a man of faith as well, I always think about footprints. And some of the times when I'm in my most darkest hours, or when I think, where is God in my life right now? I forget that he's actually carrying me. Like, he's doing all the work and I'm actually doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so, man, I love that quote. And thank you for bringing that to the show today. And definitely something I'll kind of keep mindful of. What is one book you'd recommend to someone wanting to know more about real estate investing?
Yeah, speaking for the active real estate investors, if you're looking to be an active real estate investor and more on the commercial multifamily side, one of my all-time favorite books is going to be the best ever real estate syndication book by Joe Fairless. It's pretty much like the encyclopedia of real estate syndications. One of my favorite books, and I've read it a few times actually.
Yeah, it's almost like the Bible of real estate syndication for me too. I'm looking at it. It was right there. I almost went and grabbed it just so I could show it. But yeah, that's a great one.
So it's a quote by Anais Nim, and it's, "I must be a mermaid. I have no fear of depths and a great fear of shallow living." You got to take chances in life. You have to risk it. You got to put yourself out there. And something my wife says is, if you don't go up front, you don't park up front. And it's the same thing, it's you got to put yourself out there and take risks, and if you don't, then you're never going to achieve those goals that you set.
Yeah. My motivational quote is "Take the open doors," and I have no idea who originally said it. The first time I ever heard it, I was at my first job ever. I was a caddy in the small town of Marion, Massachusetts, and I'm sitting on the fence one summer. I must have been like 14, 15 years old. And one of the other caddies is like, yeah, I'm not going to make that much money caddying this summer. I'm going to Africa. And my 15-year-old brain just like couldn't conceive, like, why would someone just go on a trip to Africa? I had never heard of anything like that. So I said, why? Like, how come you're going to Africa? I don't even remember the guy's name. And I remember he looked at me and he said, you got to take the open doors. And it's just one of those things that stuck with me my entire life. And I've applied it a few different ways. When I was 18, I left small town Massachusetts. I flew to Arizona and went to the biggest school in the country, learned a lot, never moved back to the East Coast. Left here, moved to California. My story is just one of I think I'm good at seeing where opportunity is, and I like to take it. And that, by the way, works really well in multifamily value added.
Oh yeah.
So trying to tap into that a little bit. That's my quote.
No, I like it. I never heard it before, but it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of us will we take the road less traveled or the hard way, and sometimes it's nice to maybe take that easy way or that open door. So I really like that. What is one book you'd recommend to someone wanting to know more about real estate investing?
Sure. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Tom Wheelwright because he's always been one of my favorite, say like business kind of tax authors. Because I mean his books are really well written, really well researched, but also I think he does a really good job of being able to frame everything related to all the tax discussions in there in a way that someone who's not a tax expert can really understand. So that's been one of the books that I have recommended to a ton of my clients over the years. Is really any of Tom Wheelwright's books, but Tax-Free Wealth is a really, really good one to read, especially if you're just getting started, for sure.
What motivational quote would you like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, so let me read this so I don't mess it up. So it's actually from Usain Bolt. This is a quote that I found recently, and it's, "I trained 4 years to run 9 seconds, and people give up when they don't see results in 2 months." And this is something I'm reminding myself because I think so often on social media and on bigger podcasts, you hear people, they started investing and then like 2 years, they were full-time investors, they were cash flowing like crazy. And it's easy to be like, that's where I want to be. But when you talk to people who have been in the investing world for a while, you realize it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you just got to be consistent and stay with it. You aren't going to hit this home run right away. You just got to get in the game and keep learning every day, talking to people every day. And then that's how you're going to build true wealth long term.
I love it. I know that quote, but I hadn't seen it kind of applied to real estate, but you're so true. Like I was actually at my meetup last month or earlier this month, and someone was like, "Oh, you're doing so great, yada yada." And I'd known this individual for quite a few number of years, but I was like, "Yeah, but I started investing in 2009." Like, yeah. Real estate is not a get rich quick, but it's to get wealthy for long term, is what I tell people. And so it's one of those things that most people go, "Oh wow, you're so far." It's like, yeah, but I've been working on this for a long time. This wasn't an overnight success. So thanks for sharing that quote. I really think it's powerful, and I definitely think there's so much that goes on behind closed doors with real estate investors, with the grind and the grit that we all have. And you don't always see the fruits of your labor for quite some time. So really good for all the audience out there. What's your biggest real estate mistake or failure, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest mistake in the beginning was probably not creating a thought leadership platform and just not talking about what I'm doing. So, today I have a Facebook group. I'm really active on LinkedIn. We host a monthly multifamily meetup here in Indianapolis. So, just doing things to get in front of people, talk about what you're doing. You never know where one conversation is going to take you, or meeting somebody. When you get in contact with the right people and surround yourself with people doing the things that you want to do, you'll be really surprised at just where the opportunities will take you. So meeting people, telling people what you're doing, and just creating sort of that thought leadership platform.
Oh, that's excellent. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast basically after some advice from Joe Fairless, right? Today's motivational quote is from someone I don't know, but I heard it from actually Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. And he said, "No one cares, work harder." And it was kind of in, discussion of, his contract dispute and, the fact that he wanted more money and this and that. And people, he got asked a question of what do you think people, think about you? And he said, they don't care. He's making hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And he knew that there's people out there that don't make a lot of money. And so he ultimately was just like, hey, no one cares, that I'm not getting paid. They want me to work harder. All the people of Baltimore, all the Ravens fans, they just wanted to work harder, win a Super Bowl, do what he could, and control what he could control to make more money. And so, any of you guys out there, really, no one cares, right? You post it on social media, I don't care. You post it on other places, no one really cares, right? You just got to go out there and work your butt off and work harder to make more of yourself in this world, and that's really what it all comes down to.
So this comes from my dad, actually. I don't know if he got it from anywhere. I've tried looking up if he did. I couldn't find it. But the quote is, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. And a lot of people think I'm trying to say like, oh, it's that saying where you, like if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you land amongst the stars. It's not that. So basically what that means is, set really high goals, because stars are really, really far away, right? So shoot for the stars, and if all you get to is the moon, it's like you barely make it out of orbit, you land on the moon, and you're like, man, I didn't meet my goal. Well, the view's pretty dang good from the moon. So,
on the moon, right?
So that would be my quote, and I got that from my dad.
Yeah, some people may look at like our how many deals we bought and think, oh, they must have institutional money, or Zach is like a trust fund baby or has family money or something, but it's not the case at all. I mean, I was making more money than both my parents combined by the time I was 23, in healthcare sales, doing well, making six figures. And so, I was, really trying to save my money. Well, I quit the job, and I had, almost 300K of savings. I had just relentlessly saved over the years, from following the Dave Ramsey plan and, getting a lot of bonuses, all that good stuff. And so, it took 14 months to buy the first deal. And that's all I was doing, Travis. I was laser focused on this. And that was an empty feeling. There's a lot of days where you wake up and you go from making fat paychecks every 2 weeks to now your money is just, burning up, and it goes so fast, right? And it's like every day, I've always been type A. Like I want to get up, I want to be productive, I want to make an impact, whether it's my job or my whatever team I'm a part of, I want to bring value. And when you wake up and you don't have a boss, you don't have a supervisor, you don't have structure, there's nobody to hold you accountable, and you realize nobody really cares whether you fail or not. Nobody cares. Everybody has their own job, their own thing, right?
Sure.
So it's like, what do I do today to kind of move the needle? And it's very difficult. And when you're trying to pursue this multifamily thing, it's very intimidating. And when you don't know anybody and you don't have equity sources, you don't have a lot of money, then it almost seems impossible. And it did seem impossible to me many days. And there was many days where I like mentally and emotionally quit, because it's like, what am I doing? Like, this is stupid. But you just keep grinding it out. And as long as you stay focused on it, it's a matter of when, not if, as long as you don't quit. And so that was a lot. And then even after we bought the first deal, I had to put all my money in the first deal. I had 165K left. I put 160 into the first deal. So I needed more money to keep going. I sold my house and made 120K. The next week after I sold it, I wired 100K non-refundable into a portfolio, which one of them was the HOTREI deal that you invested in. I was all in, on that deal. And I didn't make any money, Travis, for the first 2.5, 3 years. I was constantly in credit card debt, constantly trying to stay above water. September of 2019, after I, quote unquote, owned 35 million of real estate, I was dead broke and I had $12,000 of credit card debt. I had to go back and get a job. Okay, so I went back into healthcare, worked a full-time job for 18 months, did real estate at night. And so it was always a grind. It's not like you just buy an apartment, I'm rich, I'm financially free. All that money is going to the investors. And until you actually execute a plan, you sell the deal, give the investor all their money back, catch them up on their preferred return, that's when you start to make money as a general partner. So just like any entrepreneur or any business, there's a grind, there's adversity that you have to go through. And even, there's constantly adversity. There's different dynamics and challenges now that we're scaling a company. We've got, so many employees, and you've got different dynamics where people don't get along. You have to fire some people, they're not doing their job. You've got competitors that are talking crap about you constantly. So it's just, there's all kinds of stuff that comes in.
There's always something. Yeah. There's always another hurdle to climb or something to overcome. And thank you so much for sharing that. I just think so often people think that most successful people in these businesses, it's just like you said, they're from trust funds or just everything worked out perfectly for them. And like, I don't think enough people know your story. And I've been fortunate to know you a long time. And I knew that story and invested in one of your first deals. And it's really amazing. Like you said, you weren't making money, but you were managing multi-million-dollar, assets. And it wasn't until now you guys have done 11 full cycle deals. It's like now it's like all that fruit, that 1% a day has really finally all compounded, and now you're really seeing some of that hard work pay off, I'm sure. We actually have a late breaking or groundbreaking news that we want to share. The first announcement to really the world today that HOTREI and the Freedom Meetup are actually joining forces to put on our first ever Real Estate Investors Conference. So we are calling it the Breakthrough Real Estate Investors Conference. It's going to be hosted on Saturday, October 21st. And really more information to come, but we just want to really get the announcement out there. Save the date, October 21st. It's going to be a ton of value for all you real estate investors in the Phoenix metro area.
I'd say lean into the uncomfortable. That's something that we've really taken to heart, especially in the last few years here. I'll give you a specific example for that. We started a self-storage fund about a year ago, and we were a bit on the fence about whether to launch the fund or continue doing one-off syndications and joint ventures and things like that. And one morning I woke up and I just felt a little bit uncomfortable about it. And that was the day that we knew it was time to launch the fund. I texted my partner, and within the next week we had calls lined up with our attorneys to press go.
That's amazing. I always love the action that people take, and it's always scary before you do something, right? Like, I'm sure that was had a lot of consternation in trying to figure out, hey, these single syndications are going well. Is it worthwhile to do this fund and everything? But you're so right. I feel like I'm getting uncomfortable right now in a deal right myself, and so I totally feel that pain. I'm like, I'm dealing with all this money. I'm dealing with all these people's, expectations, and it does get a little bit, nerve-wracking, right? If it doesn't, you're probably in the wrong business.
For sure. And there's always a lot of thought and preparation that goes into it. And there's weeks and months of analyzing every small detail. But at the end of the day, when you wake up and you just feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's usually when you know it's time to take the next step, because you have to step outside of your comfort zone to actually take a step forward.
So let's dive into that, since you brought it up, like getting the house ready, right? As a, very first deal you're getting into, what, big picture, did you spend more or less time than you thought to get ready? What were some pain points? Help our audience out there.
Oh yeah, man. It was a incredibly fun journey. I'll say that right now, and kind of start it with that is when my wife, who was a nurse, like me being a pharmacist, we understood and got used to the grind of healthcare.
Yeah.
And doing this was a lot more work than we would have thought it would have been. Don't get me wrong. That was kind of the eye-opening thing of business. It's a lot more than you think. Just getting your LLC started is probably more than most people think, right?
Sure.
But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was so much less stress than having people's lives on the line.
For sure.
And it's totally taking your mindset of what that reality that you have of whatever you're in. You could be healthcare, you could be an engineer, you could be whatever it is. But realizing holy cow, my job is way more stressful than this. And so we really had fun through that. I mean, we had I think I was telling you before, kind of in our times together, we had some 16-hour days. We had some 14-hour days.
Yeah,
my fingers were numb with how many bolts we were screwing in, dude. I'm surprised they weren't bleeding. But we had fun. It was so much fun, and it was so good on our minds because it wasn't that normal intensity that healthcare is.
Don't ever complain about the road you're on. It's your own asphalt. Okay?
So why'd you pick that one?
My kids hear this all the time because we're in a society of complainers, right?
Of course.
I think of real estate investments that I didn't do that I should have done. I could have. I should have bought more. I should have done this. Listen, don't complain about the road you're on. It's probably a pretty good road if you're an investor right now, right? But if it's a terrible road, you need to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm in charge of the road I'm on. And you're going to later ask me about a book, and it's going to be the exact same thing of personal responsibility. You are where you are supposed to be, right? You get back from the world what you expect of it. If someone's being mean to you or something's happening to you, you need to say, why are they doing that? What am I doing where I get that reaction? When you take that complete and total ownership in your life, it changes everything. Not just your investing, but it changes your whole outlook on life. So
Is it better to have a podcast headline that says a 19-year-old that makes $100,000 a month in his first 2 years in real estate, or is it better to have Jake Kane, the guy that lives in a house and flips it every 2 years, and let's hear about how he didn't have a kitchen for 3 months or something? You know, it's not as sexy. Yeah, it's not as fun. So, but that's oftentimes more of the reality.
You know, I started out pretty early, to be honest. I had real estate goals since I was like 14, but I was going to ASU, bought a house near campus. Back in college, I house hacked it, so I rented out all the bedrooms, and that slowly led me to finishing out the degree there. And after I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I knew I liked houses. I'm like, okay, I like houses. Architecture seems like a pain. I'm not smart enough to get into that. You know, I'm like a BC student. And I kind of stumbled across appraising, and I talked to an appraiser, and I asked them what the day was like. And it was like, you know, what's your day like? And once I heard about it, I was like, okay, you know, this is it. So I just jumped in, and doing appraising obviously was a nice leg up into real estate, looking at values every single day. After a few years, I think I was 25. At that point, I bought a couple properties in Casa Grande just because the market was a little bit cheaper entry point. And then from there, bought an investment in Glendale, and now I'm up in North Phoenix. And I turned my original house hack, the Tempe house, into a long-term rental.
Lou Holtz said this, and I loved it. I heard it from the Brian Buffini show. But if you're bored with life, if you don't get up every morning with a burning desire to do things, you don't have enough goals. I love that. I wake up, I have so many things I want to accomplish. I can't sleep at night. I can't wait to wake up in the morning so I can go and tackle something and get something done. I always focus on my most important next step, or, you know, something very critical in the morning so that I can get one thing done at least every single day before the kids are awake, before everything happens in my life. And then Andrew Carnegie said, if you want to be happy, set a goal that commands your thoughts, liberates your energy, and inspires your hopes. And I hope you guys are creating goals like this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today to the best of the Hot Real Estate Investing podcast in 2023. Really looking forward to an amazing 2024. Wishing you and your family the very best holiday season and the very best start to 2024 possible. Take care and God bless.